Hello and welcome. I'm Amelia Domenko, President and CEO of the Women's Business Development Center. On behalf of the entire Wbdc team, the Board of Directors, and staff, I'd like to thank each of you for joining us for this year's conference. This is our 34th year. I would also like to give thanks to our generous sponsors, the outstanding line of speakers and panelists, and everyone else who has contributed to this event today. Our goal each year is to bring together clients, corporate and public sector partners, and our community leaders from across our 9-state region. Even with this year's adversities, we were determined to deliver our conference and doing our part to address some of the pressing topics of the day, but virtually. The start of the third decade of the 21st century, to me, sometimes looks like the end of times. We are dealing with the global health pandemic, the economic devastation from it, and the ongoing racial injustice and inequality. These events have dramatically altered our lives for the foreseeable future. And now there's even a report that an asteroid is headed our way and will be coming close to Earth the day before the presidential election. On a very serious note, though, some of the changes we are experiencing are dire. The pandemic casualties and the ongoing health risks, and the high rates of business failures and unemployment. However, some of the changes have been beneficial, notably those surrounding the new awakening and reckoning in terms of racial equality and the new commitment to eliminating systemic racism. The WBDC has been working to help find ways to rise above and recover from the challenges that we are all facing today. A new normal is beginning to emerge, which we're all trying to understand. And we must continue to help each other navigate this new normal. Our goal for today's program is to present possible new ways to overcome the challenges we've been confronting. To achieve that goal, first of all, there will be networking today with other attendees, and we hope you expand your pool of contacts, not just today, but even after the conference. Secondly, we will be providing you with insight from our keynote interview. It's going to be followed by 2 panels on survival and innovation during these very challenging times. Thirdly, there will be business development opportunities for those WBEs who have matched against corporate partner procurement needs. I do want to make one final point, though, before we get the program underway. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. It is important for us to harness the power derived from exercising our right to vote. Each and every one of us must be sure to vote in November. By no means am I suggesting how you should cast your ballot, but I am urging you to cast it. Please do not miss this opportunity for your voice to be heard. In closing, we hope you take full advantage of the learning, the networking, and the business opportunities that we have for you today. Our hope is that you will leave this conference with a renewed sense of hope and faith in our future. And always remember that the WBDC is your resource and your advocate. And now, I am delighted to introduce Deborah Jennings Johnson, the WBDC's longstanding and outstanding board chair.
Thank you, Amelia. My name is Deborah Jennings Johnson, and I'm Senior Director of Supplier Diversity for BP. I also have the privilege of being the chair of the board for the Women's Business Development Center. I represent 23 board members that are comprised of corporations, and women business enterprises. And all of them do a fabulous job of contributing to the WBDC mission. I am proud to be with you today. I'm always happy to participate in a WBDC conference, but this year I am especially so. Given that we are in the middle of a pandemic and economic crisis, I am so happy that we have the opportunity to be with you today and to talk about women's business development. I am proud of the WBDC as well. Amelia and her staff have been so busy the last few months working to make sure our women business owners have access to capital. They not only make sure they know where the funding is, they help them with the applications and do so much coaching to make sure they're able to access this capital. All of this is being done virtually, and they're providing other regular programming at the same time. So I'd really like to applaud them for working so diligently to make this happen. WBDC has also partnered with WBank, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, as we focus on racial injustice to make sure that as we look at women business owners, we are looking across all women and making sure there is a platform to erase systemic racism that has been part of our country. All of us have had to pivot during this time, and that includes BP. So as Senior Director of Supplier Diversity for BP, when the pandemic hit, the first thing we did was reach out to our diverse suppliers to see how they were doing. We also had to thank them tremendously because when we needed PPE, where did we turn? To our diverse suppliers, and all of them showed up and showed up well. So thank you to our diverse companies and our women business owners who are able to provide product not just to BP, but to many other corporations. BP was one of the first companies to embrace supplier diversity. So for many, many years, we've had inclusion in our supply chain, and this year has been no different. So I want to say thank you to those at BP that through their effort of working from home have taken some extra time to support our diverse companies that are in the BP supply chain. It is now my pleasure to introduce Emma Asante. Emma is Vice President of Special Projects and Community Relations for NBC Chicago and Telemundo Chicago. And I'm also thankful that NBC Chicago is standing with WBDC this year. They have been a long-time partner and have not wavered through the various challenges that we are having now. Emma Asante, I promise you, will have a very great conversation. So stay tuned. And now I'd like for Emma to join us.
Thank you, Deborah. And again, my name is Emma Asante, and I'm the Vice President of Special Projects and Community Relations for two great stations, NBC5 and Telemundo Chicago. And I want to welcome you to the WBDC 2020 Virtual Conference. The theme is Pivoting for Progress. And I know this year is different, and we would rather be together, connecting in the way that we normally do. But in spite of all the challenges, please know that this year, WBDC has put together an amazing program full of helpful and inspiring content and speakers to energize you and keep you moving forward. And right now, I have the honor of presenting this year's keynote speaker. It's Cheryl Mayberry McKissack. And she has a fascinating career as an entrepreneur, a corporate executive, a board member, an author, a public speaker. And through it all, she's been pivoting for progress. Cheryl is currently the president and co-owner of Black Opal, a global cosmetics and skincare company for women of color. And just last year, she also acquired Fashion Fair Cosmetics, along with her business partner, Desiree Rogers. So we just want to welcome Cheryl. Come on in and let's start talking.
Well, thank you, Emma. First of all, I want to thank you for conducting the interview today. It really is a pleasure to be working with you on this. And I also want to thank the members of the WBDC who have invited me to be here today. I have personally attended the WBDC conference many times. And even though this is our first virtual conference, I'm really honored to be here today.
So our conference theme is Pivoting for Progress. And so I want to start off by asking, how have you navigated tough economic cycles throughout your career and still found a way to pivot your way towards success and progress?
So I love this theme, pivoting for progress. And I don't think it could be even more appropriate in the world that we live in today. I use a template that I call my leadership for life strategy. And that's allowed me to go through the ups and downs, various economic cycles, and there have been many. I call them my 3 Rs, and they are basically resilience, which I have titled fierce resilience because I think it needs a little bit more help, and rewirement, or the ability to pivot, which I think goes right into the conference that we're talking about today. And then the one that I feel is really important is reflection. And I think it's especially important in the times that we're dealing with now. So this whole ability of reflection is the ability to connect deeply with yourself and others. So let me just quickly just take you through the three and maybe give you a little idea of how I use them. The first one, resilience, is really connected to the core of who you are. It's the thing that connects your values, your passion, your curiosity. And it's anchored and aligned with the fundamental need to do what you're doing, one that draws power from your desire to contribute your talents in a way that makes a difference in the world. So I've had many ups and downs through my career. Things happen. And, I had one experience after going through a exceptionally successful experience of a tech company that I was a part of, that we grew and sold to another Silicon Valley company in 5 years, and had this great success, and then thought I could do it all over again, and so got my team together, started to try to do it all over again as the worldwide senior vice president and general manager for an IP software company. Well, my experience the second time around wasn't quite the same. And because of the volatility that was in the telecom business, our investors, who were Microsoft and Bain Capital and a number of others, decided that they were going to shut the company down. And so this was a real disappointment and setback. And I really had to dig deep to find that resilience. And then be able to tap into the second piece of it, which is really this rewirement and this whole ability to pivot. As a result of that, though, I learned that resilience is something that really you have to have the wisdom and skill to pivot in light of new information, circumstances, and challenges. And I think that's really, really important based on where we are today. I also, started to move and tap into this act of the art of the pivot, which is what we are talking about a lot today. So the challenge is always the same, and that is, how do you stick with it and how do you win? So rewiring, this whole notion of rewiring yourself a little different to pivot and keep succeeding at different steps along the way. But rewirement means that you've got to abandon some of the things that you've learned and experienced in favor of learning and applying something new. Very risky to pivot, few guarantees, and that's why it's so challenging. But I decided that I would do it, and I did many different things in my life to be able to rewire and pivot to my next chapter. I decided that for me, where I wanted to be at that point in my life, and I've been since, is more working with my entrepreneurial roots. And so I decided to launch a digital research company. I did many other things too. I looked at it both personally and professionally, looked at my corporate and civic engagements, figured out how I could teach a class at Kellogg, and did that for 10 years in the MBA program for entrepreneurship. I wrote a book on entrepreneurial selling, and then did a series of president, CEO, and COO jobs, both entrepreneurial and corporate. And then I made a commitment to spend more time with my family and friends. Now, none of that was easy, but it's really about the using fierce resilience. It allows you to survive the ups and downs, and then knowing to pivot and start to rewire yourself for that next chapter. But the last R that I think is really important, it's really this whole notion of reflection. And, reflection is something that I think most of us don't take the time out to do. And the one notion of reflection that I think is really important is this whole idea of being present. And I'm really talking about investing yourself more fully in the moment. I know it sounds easy, but I have found that it just really isn't. So being present for others really takes practice. It's challenging, and It's really hard to stay present all the time. I think we've all been in the room, but not been really present. We're kind of half listening. We're thinking about that 7 a.m. Zoom call. But the most important thing to know is that when people evaluate their lives, they never say that they should have gone to the office one more day, or they should have taken one more call, or sent one more email. So I'll just give you one example because it's really, really personal to me. In 2016, I accepted a CEO position of an iconic publishing company. In 2017, my mom became ill. I reflect on my life as the only girl, middle child, who lost her biological father at age 30. I lost my beloved stepfather only 18 months before my mom became ill. And I really realized that I had to stop and really get really present. I felt the business would go on whether I stayed or not, but the quality of my mom's life really depended on me connecting in the right way. After much reflection, I didn't know at the time that I would be spending the last 9 months of my mom's life. My mom and I had a very close relationship, and we saw each other a lot, even though we lived in, different cities. But I didn't realize that, sometimes even though I was there, I was not really present. I've gained a different understanding of being present and the value that it has. I think, being present is even more meaningful in our lives today. And since we've all been quarantined during COVID, I think we need to understand the value and make the commitment. We need to figure out how we can check in more than we check out. I think it enriches our engagement with others. And I think it can increase your knowledge, your understanding, and your compassion. So when I think about it, I think of resilience, rewirement, the act of the pivot, and reflection as been really 3 key areas that have served me well. And they allow me to really weather that uncertainty, whether it's economic or social changes.
And when you talk about rewiring and pivoting, and you use the word risk, the emotion that goes with that is fear. It's kind of scary to do that. How do you find the courage to make that move?
I use one simple trick, and that is I think about what could be the worst thing that could happen if I make this change. And what I find when I limit it to just one thing, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen? I realize that it's probably not that bad. So in some cases, it might be, if it doesn't succeed, you go out and find something else. And what I have found that's been really interesting is that the ability to find something else, and it opens up doors and avenues for you that sometimes you don't even know are there. So it takes away the fear because that, what? So if it doesn't work, you go do something else. And as you can see, I've done a lot of things in my career. And, not all of them have been great, but, probably more great than not, hopefully. But I've learned something along the way with each one of them.
Wow. I heard somebody say once that, when you have fear, face it with curiosity, kind of dig a little deeper. Sometimes you learn something. So thank you.
Love that.
Yes. As a successful Black woman business leader in both your corporate career, and you've also had multiple entrepreneurial companies, how do you make a difference, especially looking at diversity and inclusion and equity? These are topics that we're really looking at as a country right now. Talk to me a little bit about that. How did those two worlds intersect for you?
Yeah, very, very good question. I think the best way to make a difference is to be purposeful and intentional. And I know you probably heard that from a lot of people, but I really try to do that in everything that I do. And when my business partner, Desiree Rogers, and I purchased Black Opal, we were very clear on what we thought we could do and how we could do well beyond just selling products and services. Obviously, that's what we do as a business, but this experience was going to be something more than that. And so the first thing we did, we purchased the company. The company was headquartered in New York, and we moved it to Chicago. And then we did what I believe is the most important work that any small business as well as any corporation can do right now. And that is the ability to do job creation, create jobs for people. And so we were very clear that we thought the best way to do that was to buy an existing company. This company was 25 years old. It had one founder. And unfortunately, the founder became ill. And I think decided that he wanted to make sure that the business was in good hands. And so we were very fortunate to be able to capitalize on that opportunity. And when we came to Chicago, we wanted to be very focused on not just providing jobs, but also making sure that we, focused on women and minorities to fill a number of those jobs. And currently today, we're 90% female, we're 70% African American, and we have a couple of good men. We were very purposeful and intentional to make sure that we extended our reach beyond just the core jobs. So all of us do services. We have our legal team, our product development team, our PR team, our IT team, and all of those have a minority or a woman that's leading those areas for us. Right now, people need jobs more than ever. In 2018, the Small Business Administration said that 1.9 million jobs were created annually by small businesses. This accounts for 64% of the new jobs created in the US. So I think this is the number one thing that we can do that really can make a difference. Now, on the subject of giving back, that's one that's also very near and dear to what we are trying to do. And we want to be purposeful and intentional about that as well. We've decided basically to focus on 3 initiatives: small business, women and children, and racial equality. One of the first things we do, very simple, is that we partnered with a program that our First Lady, MK Pritzker, was doing around helping women who have been incarcerated transfer back into the workforce through an organization called Grace House. And so, very simple, we sent them Black Opal beauty boxes. And I really can't tell you how much joy we had to see these women open these boxes. They sent us pictures, they sent us emails, and they told us things like, it was one of the first times that, they had felt like anybody recognized them, that, that they were valued. And it was a very, simple, gesture. And so we hope that just this little kind of thing will hopefully, build their confidence and hopefully can make a difference in their lives. So the other area that is an ongoing effort and is the area of racial equality. And we are trying to educate and using our media property to assist people in knowing where they can go to have a voice. And so just recently, we messaged information where people can write to officials in the cases of Breonna Taylor, the young Black woman who was shot in her home by police as she was sleeping. She's the first person that's graced the cover of O magazine in 20 years. And Oprah felt strongly about this and basically said that we can't be silent. We have to use whatever megaphone we have as a cry for justice. And so we're just going to do what we can. We're a small company, so we can't do everything, but we're going to do our best.
And, I want to stay on the topic of diversity and inclusion and equity for just a minute and just talk a little bit about influence. You're the first woman and the first African-American chair of the Deluxe board. And so you're pushing decision makers to kind of, you're guiding them along the way. How do you use influence when you look at diversity and inclusion and equity?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing is that you probably have heard this before, what we've got to do is make sure that people not only hear it, but believe it. And that is this notion that it's just good business, okay, to have diversity and inclusion in your boardrooms, in your management suites, in your employee population. I firmly believe that when boardrooms and C-suites management reflect the diversity of America, we all win. I've been fortunate to serve on public boards for over 20 years. One of the first things that I did was I said, I want to join committees where I can make a difference. And so I decided governance was going to be my area of expertise. I've chaired the governance committee for all the public boards that I've been on. I felt, well, this was the best way for me to make sure that there was a diverse slate of candidates that could be presented to the board for consideration. Now, obviously, even as the chair, you do not make the final decision. It is a group decision, but it's really hard to get a home run if you're not even up for bat, right? And so, to make sure that the slate is there, is really important. So I had an opportunity to serve on the board of Private Bank for 14 years before they were acquired by CIBC. And when I joined, I was the only woman on the board for many years. But by the time that they were acquired, we had 3 women on the board, 2 African American, a Hispanic male, and our board was over 30% minority and diverse. So it's not just about diversity and inclusion with board directors, it's also about supplier diversity. And so, what should you do? Okay. You ask questions, okay? You review the data, you make recommendations, you introduce, make introductions to companies and individuals. I cringe when I hear companies say they cannot find qualified, diverse candidates. I'm going to introduce you to my Rolodex. I know plenty, okay? I'm very proud of the work that Deluxe Corporation Foundation has done in supporting organizations like Wbdc. Deluxe was only two companies in the Minneapolis area that made the honor roll for 12 consecutive years for having more than 20% female directors and more than 20% corporate leadership. Now, Minneapolis has 17 Fortune 500 companies, so there's definitely room for improvement in that area.
Wonderful. And we're just about out of time, but I just wanted to quickly ask, with everything going on, how do you find your center? How do you maintain your balance?
Wow, that's such a great question. And of course, we know recently Michelle Obama, our former First Lady, spoke about the fact that she was feeling a low-grade depression as a result of the pandemic and some of the unrest that's going on. And I was so glad to hear that, not to hear that she was depressed, but to hear that she announced it, that she made it okay for us to say that, hey, we're feeling a little off, okay? And quite frankly, I would expect for us to feel a little off, okay? So, and I had been feeling that way myself, and I'd been struggling with trying to figure out what I could do. So I tried to do a few things. I'll just give you a couple examples. I think the first thing you have to do, you have to admit that, you're feeling that way so you can figure out what to do about it. I think the second thing is that I decided to do something positive, and one of the things that I realized about the quarantine that was different is that it forced me to slow down. And I think I needed to slow down. Typically I was on a plane every other week, and now I'm working from home. I decided to come up with a new normal, a new routine. I'm an early morning person, so I decided to get up at my regular time and put on my clothes, maybe just Lululemon leggings, but I also put on a colorful top just to make myself feel a little bit better. And add a little lipstick just to make myself feel like I'm really doing something, right? And then we also, one of the things we did in our company is that we made at least one meeting a week be mandatory that you had to turn your cameras on, because we found that we would have these Zoom meetings and everyone would have their cameras off, and we wanted to reconnect as a team. I reached out to friends that I hadn't talked to in a very long time, and I actually had time to talk to them, and they had time to talk to me. And I decided that, I could probably treat myself to Ginny's once in a while, maybe a little more than once in a while, my favorite ice cream. I started working out with a virtual trainer, and I decided just to take walks just to clear my head. And I tried to incorporate some new fun, things that I normally wouldn't do. And I hosted a virtual tea and a book signing for 70 women. I think at the end, I think the thing that's important is to try, even in the midst of these really unprecedented times, to incorporate some laughter into your life.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. You've definitely given us a lot to think about. Definitely feel ready to pivot towards progress. Cheryl, Mayberry, McKissack, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma.
And I'll turn it back to Amelia.
Thank you, Cheryl, for sharing your enlightening and inspiring perspective on so many important and timely topics during these very turbulent times. And also thank you, Emma, for leading this stimulating conversation. We greatly appreciate having both of you with us today. Next, we have 2 dynamic panel discussions for you. Then, the Shirley Marks Pitch Competition Regional Finale will occur. And finally, the one-on-one business matchmaker. So please stay with us.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pivoting for Progress. I'm Sandra Rand, and I'll be moderating today's panel with 4 incredible individuals who are going to share some noteworthy information for you in terms of helping you move forward. I, in fact, was the Director of Supplier Diversity for United Airlines for several years. I would probably say close to 25 before I took advantage of a buyout. So I'm intimately familiar with the whole notion of supplier diversity and what it means, both from a corporate perspective as well as a procurement perspective. And I say from a procurement perspective as well, having been a senior buyer, but equally as important, I'm married to an entrepreneur. So I get a sense of what is needed in this space and the pain on both sides of the coin, if you will, as we go through this unprecedented change. Today's conversation is going to be about what we can do, where we are, what we need to do going forward. It's going to be candid, hopefully informative, and what it's not intended to do is the ultimate answer to everything, but to give you options, to allow you to rethink where you are as corporations have had to rethink where they are. So with that, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to do a self-introduction, and we will get started shortly thereafter. Punita, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I'm Punita Patel. I am Vice President of Supplier Diversity at JPMorgan Chase. JPMorgan Chase is a global financial institution. We provide everything from investment banking services to our Chase branded banks in the United States.
Thank you. And Carlos?
So my name is Carlos Cubia. I am the Vice President and Global Chief Diversity Officer for Walgreens Boots Alliance. We are the largest pharmacy-led retailer on the planet with over 400,000 associates and over 16,000 locations. And I am happy to be here and be a part of this panel.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Daryl, how about yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Daryl Hodnett, and I'm the System Director of Supplier Diversity and Inclusion for Advocate Aurora Health. And then Advocate Aurora Health is a merged company, and we are the largest healthcare provider in both Illinois and Wisconsin. And certainly with the advent of COVID, it has been interesting time for our organization.
I'm sure. And finally, Byron, please.
Appreciate WBDC for having me and the panelists on Pivoting for Progress. I am Byron Witherspoon, Director of Supply Diversity, Supply Relationship Management for Ameren Corporation. We are a regional utility provider of electric and gas for Southern Illinois, Eastern Missouri. We have about a 65,000 square mile territory. We have 2.5 million or so electric customers and another million or so gas customers.
Thank you so much all. As you can see, we have a varied group of panelists, so we think we will be able to share with you some different approaches across industry lines that may be of benefit to you. So why don't we get into our conversation? So let's talk a little bit about where was your procurement activity as an organization before COVID, and where did it find itself after COVID, and also layered with this civil unrest. So when we look at what the normal or the historic point of engagement was between your companies and suppliers, and what does it look like now? So why don't we start with Carlos on that?
Well, it's interesting. We've had a very robust supplier diversity program for a number of years that we were looking to accelerate prior to COVID happening. We have brought on a new director of vendor and supplier diversity that works in partnership with the WBDC and other organizations like it. And we were really focusing on driving more spend and extending the number of products on our shelves, looking at goods for retail and goods not for retail to make sure that we were giving back to the communities that did business with us. So our program has always been a robust program, but it's been amplified and accelerated as a result of COVID, because now we've had to reach wider and further to find additional suppliers to meet the needs as it relates to PPE, for example, and other areas that we are really starting to make a difference in and to elevate. So what I would say is we've always had a program, but it's been amplified as a result of this program.
Thank you. And we'll get around to everyone to have this overall sense of that state before and after, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of your comments that you just shared, Carlos. So Byron, why don't you share a little bit again with us about who you were pre and who you are post?
You know, it's very interesting, Sandra, as I was listening to Carlos's response, I took a note on the word amplify because we, like Walgreens, we've had a mature supply diversity initiative, but given current times with COVID, we're finding ourselves accelerating with it, not coming off the pedal, but leaning into it. You know, it may seem counterintuitive, but from an Ameren perspective, what we've not seen is a decline in our spending. You know, when we talk about PPE, Carlos mentioned the personal protective equipment. We really did look for utilizing local regional firms. I tell you, one of our blue chips is environmental social governance. If you talk about coming out of COVID, what we're really looking at is more of a sustainable focused approach, and how do we benefit you know, our local and regional service territory. I think we'll get into that a little bit more as we go forward, but to your question, where were we at? You know, I think we were in pretty good shape, you know, going along with how we were doing business, how we're going to come out of it from an ESG, diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. I think we're going to go a little harder in the paint, as I like to use, from a business diversity perspective.
Sounds like a plan, an aggressive one. Thank you. Punita.
Sure. So listening to my counterparties and colleagues on the call, I think I too was really appreciative of the word amplify and accelerate. And I say that because our program's been around for 26 years. It's pretty mature. Our supply chain is pretty mature, and we've been committed to supplier diversity pretty strongly for you know, most of that time frame. But with COVID, I think we decided that given what's going on, we needed to, like many of our companies, think a little bit more about how we can support the small and diverse businesses. And so I think that helped us accelerate and focus even further on our goals and what we'd want to achieve prior to COVID. I think, and then you said, like, if we're layering in some of the civil unrest, I think that the civil unrest has given all of us an opportunity to be more comfortable taking a look at a more focused approach on a couple of segments, right? I think that's that next expanded level of, I think, targeting and focusing, that it's given us a lot of room to talk about and also explore and think about additional ways where we can enhance our support of the community.
Absolutely. I think it's pretty clear that when you look at the events that have unfolded, it is a worldwide issue. It is a worldwide concern and conversation that's happening right now. So we would be completely out of touch if we did not embrace this opportunity at this point in time to truly make systemic change for real this time in our country's history. So I think we're all on that same page.
Hey, Sandra, I know you're going to go to Darryl, but if I could, yes. You were talking about the civil unrest. I tell you, you know, one of the things that we did from our president and the chief procurement officer, the vice president, CPO, and the president of Ameren Corporation, we sent out a letter to our entire supply chain, really letting them know what our view of the civil unrest was, aligning them with Ameren's expectations, right? Because what we're really saying is, hey, we're looking to align ourselves with partners who share our values. I know we'll get a little more into it. We'll dive deeper into that. But I think it's important that our leadership took that step to say, hey, here is where we are. These are our values. We really want to partner with suppliers who align around our values. And, you know, we did get some really good feedback from the supplier base, but that is something that we're looking, you know, to continue.
Absolutely. Darryl?
So I've been a builder of supplier diversity programs for an awful lot of years, and I was brought in to really build a supply diversity program for both Aurora and then ultimately Advocate Aurora. And so the last 2 years, we've been on a push to increase and really lean into supply diversity. So with goals, accountability, if you will, for senior managers, and then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about being a healthcare business, it was all about one, taking care of patients, certainly. And then two, the acquisition of PPE all around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And so for our supply chain organization, it was, hey, everything kind of went to a halt and everyone was focused on PPE acquisition. So we were in pretty good shape as an organization during that. Now, as we're starting to get away from COVID, we hope, we're focused again on our goals and hitting our targets to ultimately be the anchor institution that we want to be in Illinois and Wisconsin. That's incredibly important for healthcare business, and that is you're an anchor in a community because you help to fix people, and you are just a vital part of what goes on. And so supplier diversity plays into that very well.
Exactly. So I'm curious to know if there are any examples that you would like to share in terms of things that you have done real time, if you will, that have affected the way you do business. Again, obviously, this has been, as the song says, the world has been turned upside down. So everyone has been impacted. No one will come away from this unscathed. So when you look at your personal operations, if you will, can you cite some examples where you've had to press into service either existing suppliers or new suppliers to provide you with things that you historically have never had a need for, or situations where the things you have used in the past have suddenly changed? How have you engaged with possible suppliers to say, you know what, I know you manufacture X for us, but can you shift your manufacturing stream to now provide Y? Can you, in fact, look at partnering with, it gets to that old ongoing question of mergers and or acquisitions, for example. Talk to me a little bit about what that feels like now when you are fighting for your economic survival as companies as well, and how you're relating to and partnering with suppliers to help you get through this phase in your corporate lives.
I can start.
Carla?
Go ahead, Carlos.
That's a great question, and it's an interesting one. But when I think about some of the things that we had to do differently, and in the moment was our onboarding process. Some would argue, I don't know that I would say this, but some would argue that it's cumbersome to come on, the onboarding process for a new vendor. But because of the need and the expediency of trying to bring folks on, we had to change some of our processes in terms of our vetting to bring folks on. Now, we still did our due diligence, but we accelerated that. For example, we knew that there was a shortage of masks and gloves and things and even sanitizers. So our current vendors were running out, but there were other people calling us saying, we have access to supplies and products that you can use. So what we did was we engaged with these individuals. Some were minority, women-owned vendors and suppliers, and said, okay, let's talk about how we can get your products in our stores quickly so that we can meet the needs of our customers. Unfortunately, during the civil unrest, which the George Floyd incident happened right around that time, we were victims of some of the civil unrest and had some unfortunate damage to a number of our stores across the country. And what we wanted to do was to make sure that in those neighborhoods where the damage and the looting happened, that we were using minority contractors to rebuild our stores. So we went out and quickly brought on some minority-owned contractors and construction companies to start to rebuild and remodel our stores to get them back open. Just in the interest of time, those are just a few examples, but really looking at our processes and saying, how can we accelerate the process, get people on quicker, and not miss a step, but also give opportunities to minority-owned vendors and suppliers. I'll pause there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carlos. Daryl, anything that comes to mind in terms of an immediate action that you had to take with suppliers?
Well, there's a really big immediate action that we and a number of other health systems did with Premier, who's our group purchasing organization. They really were the lead in this. We, about 15 health systems gathered together, and we have pledged an amount of our volume for N95 masks. And at some point, there'll be some other PPE this company will do to a small minority-owned company in Texas. And the purpose of that was what I think we and other healthcare systems found was that with this whole issue of COVID and the lack of PPE supply in the US, i.e. that being manufactured, and for the most part, most of it's manufactured offshore, it started to cause, when we could find product, very large spikes in price, even for someone with the kind of buying power that an Advocate Aurora has. So this is our way, I think, as an industry of starting to say, we need to start bringing some of that manufacturing back to the United States. So we, at least in a small part, are starting with this little firm called Prestige in Texas. More to come as we go forward.
Sounds very powerful. Quick question on that issue. Did you or did Premier find the need to have to assist in any type of development way with Prestige, or were they able on their own to just ramp up and deal with the capacity issues and what have you, or did they need some form of external support to do that?
Premier has actually been doing some of the development work because Prestige was already, Sandra, part of their contract network. And so they kind of said, this is a company where if we get the right volume from some of our members and with some of our own expertise, we can help them to ramp up.
Perfect. Who did I not get on this particular question? I didn't get Byron.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. It's interesting, Darryl, you were talking about essentially the supply chain bidding itself up. PPE was going to the highest bidder, if you will. And you found multiple industries competing against each other to get that much needed safety stuff for their professionals. Now, one thing I'd say from an AMR perspective, as I think about the question, the one thing I know that it caused, this is obviously beyond supply diversity, but just really goes into the entire supply chain and small business, et cetera. But one thing I know we did was start collaborating with our other industry peers even more. Now, we have been doing that, but we were talking to our industry peers on who was providing what, how were they able to, get it and that. And so collaboration went up. That's a good thing. When we talk about local impact and you're talking about companies shifting, I'll tell you a story. It's kind of a cool story, actually. Here in St. Louis, there was a local distillery who recognized that we had a need for hand sanitizers. Now, what they did was they pivoted, retrofitted their facility to make hand sanitizers. So we began buying hand sanitizers from that company on the St. Louis side. Cool thing, because they found a need. But that's what we are looking for from our supply base. When you think about innovation going up, the kinds of things and people doing, companies doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do in order to help the community. I was thinking about that example when you asked the question. And so the rest of it now, we have some long-term contracts in place, right, with some companies that's going to provide us, the hand sanitizers, the N95 masks, the nitrile gloves, that kind of thing. There's some things in place. But now when we have those offshoots is not the right word, but those different opportunities, we do and have been able to identify some companies that will be able to provide us those services going forward from a PPE perspective.
Fantastic. I heard about that story, in fact, of those distillers who had now started to prepare hand sanitizers. Why don't we close out this section, in fact, with Panita?
Sure. So we certainly utilized a lot of PPP support also. I think that when people think about just the immediate need, obviously first and foremost was all of our healthcare industry and all the healthcare providers, like they just needed to be present. And then of course our support system that's out in the network, right? Everything from our firemen to the sanitation collection or organizations, and those folks had to be out in the network. But the next thing that needed to be kept open was people's access to their money. So while our maybe corporate locations were closed, we certainly had to figure out ways to keep most of our branch network open and then to keep ourselves and our customers. So we pivoted and looked at unique partnerships as well as localization and collaborated with others across industries, to be honest, right? One of the things that we found in supplier diversity and with organizations like Wbdc and others is you guys had all stepped up and said, hey, here are these providers and they're pivoting, and we heartedly utilize those. The other area that changed, I think, for all of us was the ability to pivot from perhaps being in office or having a certain technological infrastructure to a stronger remote infrastructure for more employees and the masses that you'd kind of change, right? From having an office full of 5,000 people to everyone working from home. You just change the dynamics of the tools and the systems that they require. So that was kind of the other area I think that changed for us.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because again, most companies are in fact operating remotely. And I think, again, from a world perspective, as we view it here in the US especially, I'm not sure if we're going to go back to that old normal going forward. I think a lot of corporations have sensed that, one, it has been a cost saving to have people working remotely and what have you. So I see a lot of things on the horizon that may in fact be troubling, and an overabundance of office facilities, if you will, around the country and what have you. But let's talk about because all of you are working remotely, did this represent any new opportunities for you to acquire other things or other services now working in this environment? So Panita, why don't you pick that up and then I'll circle around the guys.
Sure. So with our organization, security is foremost for us. So before COVID, we were not on Zoom. So we are benefiting right now from the ability to utilize Zoom. I think there's certain platforms that are a little bit tighter, but we certainly did not utilize Zoom as much as we do now. So that was kind of one of the ones for us that's turned into second nature for us.
Daryl?
I think as Panina noted, I think the same thing. It's the whole idea of communicating with people via technology, via Zoom and Microsoft Teams. It's a different dynamic, I think, of working. Now it is. I need to use more email. I need to use more of this technology to maybe talk to peers about potential vendors, let's say. That I know of. And, in the old way of working, Sandra, it might have been, let me walk down the hall to somebody and sit down and say, I got 5 minutes with you. Let me talk to you about this particular vendor that we have. So I think it's going to take all of us some time as it relates to our work into the future. But you're exactly right. This is going to be, I think, the future for work for an awful lot of us going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has brought along a lot of changes, but the changes they've been varied, right? We have about 9,500 stores in the US, and we were an essential employee because of our pharmacy. So they stayed open. So it didn't change for those employees that's in the stores. And for us in the US, that's about 230,000 employees. that had to go to work every day, keep our stores open, but we had to figure out how to make the store safer, how to keep them safe, whether it means folks coming in with masks, more security in terms of enforcing the mask policy, social distancing, putting up the plexiglass so that, so how we operate differently. In support center and the corporate offices, pretty much everybody went home. And, our campus here in the Deerfield, we have 10 plus buildings, that's full of people at any given time that are almost empty now. So I was watching something about a week ago where I think it was REI, the big out, the sporting goods store. They're closing their headquarters and selling it. They decided that they don't need the brick and mortar anymore. And I've watched businesses across the globe that are saying, you guys may not come back at all in 2021. So we're going to be working from home. So they're saving money on lighting and gas and electricity and all these other things. But the challenges that happens is we have vendors that work in our building that's cleaning our buildings. We have people that come here and do certain things. So the impact that that's going to have on some of our vendors may not be as advantageous as the money that we're saving. So we're looking at how do we continue to engage some of those other individuals. One of the things that we did is when we saw a lot of the folks being laid off from like hotels and restaurants, we went and hired we had 70,000 applications for about 20,000 jobs for our stores and hired people in record time. We got rid of background investigation and drug testing for, to get people on board. They still had to go through it, but we put that on the back end of the hiring process to keep people employed. So we know that while there's a lot of new ways of working that come out of this, that there's also some negative impacts to folks. And we wanted to take a look at that negative impact to see how we can make a difference and to keep people employed and that economic empowerment in the community.
Absolutely.
Those are some of the things.
Yep. We didn't hear from you, Byron, on this one.
Yeah, it's interesting as I listen to Carlos in many respects, Ameren, obviously being a utility, have essential workers as well. Well, think about our line workers. It's interesting because they were working throughout COVID. Now, the consequences of COVID, when they're on someone's property, we've had instances where the property owners have come out and they'd be able to have some engagement with our line workers, et cetera. And, what we found with COVID, given social distancing and, the things that you talked about, Carlos, what we found ourselves doing is having to advise and send out information up front to our customers saying, hey, we need to get out and do our work. Typically being stewards of the community, we want to leave it better, engage with our residents as necessary, but now we're finding ourselves having to social distance in that regard. But now, when you talk about what's happening, you talk about commercial real estate. It's interesting because we're going to find the value of commercial real estate going up because there's going to be a vacancy factor now. To your point, Carlos, folks are being able to do work at home. I'm an old head. And so when I think about what transitioning to home means, it means me learning new things. And so now it also inspires innovation of how you can do things via the web. And so when we think about the things we're doing now, this conference, obviously WBDC is putting on webinar, production value, all of the things that we would have otherwise not thought about is what we're doing. And so when we talk about skinning the cat, we're thinking about multiple ways that we can do that. And so even from our supply-based perspective, it is causing them to think different. And so coming out of COVID is really inspiring some different innovation faster. It is creating a climate that causes people to think differently. And you talk about think outside the box. I'll leave you with this. I had a professor who told me you talk about thinking outside the box. He used to say, in order to think outside the box, you have to understand the box. And so what we're having our suppliers do is they're looking at understanding where we were and now having to be inspired to think differently on how to accomplish what we're looking for. And we have to kind of do that together.
It's interesting because historically, an individual who wanted to sell to you had benefit of going, for example, to your annual report, taking a look at your mission statement, your vision statements, and what have you. And so there was data that was out there that was created from a historic perspective. Well, unless your fiscal year just recently changed, that information is not even there. So given everything that we've just said in terms of how everyone is having to function and work differently and provide their product or service differently, are there specific things that you guys are seeing in the short term, 6 months out, a year out, or what have you, that might be industry or service shifts that you would want to direct our suppliers to? We all know that a major corporation is like turning a battleship in the middle of an ocean. It just is not nimble. The advantage to small or diverse suppliers is that they have the ability to, in fact, pull together an entire team and pivot successfully. But we want to try to give them possible directions to pivot into. So is there anything beyond what we've already shared about the work at home environment that you might want to share, things that you're hearing around the water cooler or coming from the C-suite that might be opportunities in the future that they should start gearing themselves up for, preparing to be that creative answer for your problem, if you will? Because again, we're all being met with problems that we did not have in our past. So it really sounds like, if you are the person with the answer and have the ability to ramp up quickly and what have you, you're the person I want to talk to from a corporate point of view. So any particular industries or services, whether they be straight services or professional services that you're seeing that you anticipate are going to be coming down the pike?
I'll jump in and just mention one category, and I mean maybe we get some discussion with this because we obviously have others, but given that we've come home, Sandra, and the technological advancements are at play in the space of digital is going to be hugely important when we talk about system integrations. You talk about our customer platforms and the digital hardware, security camera, cyber is a super big deal. In fact, it's interesting, Daryl, you were mentioning Teams and I think it's WebEx. There are only a couple platforms that we're even able to use because of the cyber threats. Now, Zoom, wouldn't have been one that we've been able to use on our virtual private network. But my point in sharing that is when we think about our go forward strategy, there's a lot of building construction, and we think about the T2 or the tier 2 opportunities. But what I would say from a digital perspective is that system integrations, the cyber connectivity, when you talk about digital hardware, those kinds of things are going to be increasingly important for Ameren.
Thank you, Byron. Daryl, anything that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think for me, if I think about healthcare, I mentioned it before, but I think this is going to be the biggest thing for not only Advocate Aurora, but all health systems, and that is the securing of PPE. And maybe more importantly than that, securing it here in the United States, as well as getting it offshore. So, one of the things that I would be suggesting suppliers think about, especially those that are distributors of the product now, it would be good to start thinking about, as you look around at what the Advocate Auroras and the Rushes and the Cleveland Clinics of the world are thinking about and are doing as it relates to manufacturing that stuff here in the US, is how do I maybe get into this game of manufacturing this product, whether it is I can do it myself because I'm already a distributor, so I have some general idea, or if I can maybe go team with someone who maybe is already in the manufacturing business, and then that becomes a different way of going to market with the product. So if I think about health systems, that's a very, I think, fertile area for the next 5 to 10 years, maybe.
that's a major projection, and one we would hope wouldn't be there, but the reality is it probably will be. Benita, anything from JP's perspective?
Sure. So I think we've covered the digital and remote working space. I think that there's definitely more remote assistance of our employees also in their technical tools. And it's funny, sorry, Byron, I do have to say that, yes. So Zoom is not approved for our JP Morgan Chase equipment. We're allowed to use Zoom on other equipment, but not on, the JP Morgan Chase, because it's just because of the security risk. So there's a number of platforms. So I think that developing more secure communication systems and technologies as people are remote is definitely an opportunity area, and people that figure that out in our space. I mean, I think the places where we're looking for innovation is in the financial technical spaces, right? FinTech area. So that hasn't changed. We're still super interested in like organizations that are either, creating that next pivoting type of technology aspects in that. That said, we have traditional brick and mortar locations, and we are expanding our retail branches also. And so we've been very, very deliberate in utilizing local resources in building out that network. And then from the PPP perspective, right, the utilization of PPP at those locations, but as well as I think when we think about the technology to clean, like there's the traditional cleaning services, but then there's other technology that provides sanitization and cleaning, and people working on developing that technology. I think as an industry, will probably have a leg up if they're able to kind of create opportunities to optimize, either whether it's solution or light or laser based or whatever it is that they're focusing on. I think that's a great opportunity area for folks also.
Yeah.
I would agree. Carlos?
Well, again, try not to regurgitate what we've already heard, but some of the things that maybe I didn't hear. So when you think about the COVID and how long this is going to last, I think it's going to have a long tail on it. So delivery services, so folks that can set up delivery services, home delivery, I think vendors that can pivot to that because at Walgreens, we have a lot of people that don't want to come to the store to get their prescriptions, or not even just prescriptions, just basic household goods. So we contracted with a lot of delivery services, whether it's Grubhub or Postmates or whatever.
Instacart.
All of those types of things. So there's opportunity there for delivery services, and not just for our products, but anything, grocery store. And then tech services. I think people are underestimating the amount of need there's going to be for additional tech. So just because you have Wi-Fi doesn't mean you're set up for home office. There's other things that need to happen within your home. Cybersecurity, which was already said, but then the health delivery, that people are so nervous now around going to even see a doctor or a dentist. There's telehealth, telemedicine. I think the expansion of that, we haven't even started to see the growth in that area. So to the extent that these small businesses or mid-sized businesses can pivot in those areas. And then one other area I think is we're already starting to see a boom is home office equipment and accessories. You can't even find office chairs right now. Everyone's sold out of this. If you wanted, my son's school is at home now. He's full-time. So I wanted to get a separate chair to put upstairs in his room, a nice, comfortable, I had to search far and wide because everyone's sold out. So those types of things, they were hot many years ago. Now they're hot again today. So repivoting is kind of like back to the future. You know what I mean? So those are some of the things I have. And again, what everyone else said as well around.
Yeah, that's an excellent analogy. Everything new is old again, or the reverse. Everything old is new again.
All is new again, yes.
Yep. So I appreciate that. And I think that's what our viewers are going to be interested in hearing today, because many of them are in industries that may, in fact, no longer have a viable life going forward. So decisions will have to be made. One, whether you stay in business at all, or two, whether you can take those skill sets that you've created and apply them to a different industry, if you will. So let's chat a little bit about anything that you guys are seeing on the professional services horizon. That was always one of the last bastions of penetration, if you will, within corporations. Any messaging for them?
If I can,
Mhm.
I'd say that is still an area where I think there's a lot of opportunity, not just for Walgreens, but probably for everyone on this call. And I don't want to speak for anyone else. Professional services is still lacking when it comes to diversity in terms of diverse firms, whether it's accounting, legal services, what have you. We have taken a concerted effort to really try to increase the number of diverse owned law firms that we do business with when it relates to, outsourcing litigation or some of the things that we don't handle in-house, making sure that we're looking for diverse owned firms. When it comes to communications and marketing, we're demanding almost that the companies that do business with us, that they have, I think Byron said at the beginning, that they have a shared value in terms of how they do business within their shop. So if you're going to do an RFP with us, we're going to ask you, what's your diversity strategy? What's your supply diversity strategy? Yes. And is it in alignment with what we're doing? And if it is, then we can probably move forward together. But if it isn't, then we're going to continue to look.
Right. Anyone else want to speak to the professional services issue? If not, I want to pivot on to something else.
I'd like to maybe say one thing about it from the Advocate Aurora perspective. We talked about we've got these goals in place and they're measurable goals. So one of the things we're working on right now is engaging our professional services arm, those leaders who actually own the budgets to make their own decisions outside of procurement. Interestingly enough, in finance, two real quick things. In our finance organization, for the last couple of years, and leadership counts. So we've got a CFO, we've got a senior vice president who have been very big about diversity and inclusion in finance, not only in who we hire and who we intern, but who we do business with. So we've got quite a bit of money. Still a small amount compared to what we invest, but it's a really large number of dollars that we are investing with minority-owned investment firms, as well as those companies we bring on as investment bankers. And we're starting to do some things, as Carlos mentioned, with our legal firms as well. So you're right, Sandra. I mean, that is kind of the last frontier for those of us that have been around for a long time, and to start kind of seeing those professional services open up is a good thing.
But it's one that we're focusing on. Listen, man, I really appreciate that the conversation, because it is a great opportunity for us, but it's one that we recognize and that we're focusing on. Professional services, when you think about it, is such a broad category, but for us, when we think about legal or finance, to your point, Darryl, those are the two key areas that we're looking at. When we say now, from a legal perspective, that doesn't necessarily come through the supply chain, but we have put some a scorecard around how we're bringing in diverse-owned law firms. We're doing some mentoring around that. To Carlos's point, we're asking that even some of our non-diverse law firms, we want to know how many of diverse lawyers they're hiring that's working on our matters.
Exactly.
From a finance perspective, when you think about our treasury, they've done a really good job in getting diverse owned investment banking companies into our bond deals and working on some of our the pension fund and that. And so what I will tell you, the other key strategy, we're going through a huge transformation. You hear transformations. I've been with Amherst since 2007, and kind of this is our second watershed moment. And, some of you guys might be there already, but we're going toward a category management strategy. And really what it does is gives us an opportunity to build out strategies per our category. And so what we'll be able to do is look at what we're spending in the category, get with the business segment to understand what the available supply base looks like. Yes. Now you say, well, why is that important? Well, that's important because now we understand what's in the strategy. We're working with the business segment, and we can identify available, ready, willing, and able suppliers to even goal a category to say, hey, engineering, architectural services, we have greater visibility. Mm-hmm. Advertising, we have greater visibility. And guess what? We have these suppliers who can play in that space. Let's take this from X to Y.
Exactly.
Category management will help us drive greater impact, particularly in the professional services space.
Absolutely.
I think I just want to share one word. I think so Byron, you hit on some great things there, and so did everybody else. We have category management. We're pretty tightly integrated into being able, partnered with our strategic sourcing organization in terms of where they're creating the strategy with them in terms of the supplier diversity or diverse elements. But what I loved about what you said, and this is really key, is two things you mentioned, and which we are doing also. And so the one of them is, as you're looking at legal services, as you're looking at advisory services, consulting services, not only hiring the diverse owned firms, but then asking for the makeup of the team that's bidding for your project, right? And then who in that space is diverse, that's being led up to lead larger projects for you, because that's who's going to start creating their next law firm or their next consulting organization. So that's really important. And the more we all do it, the stronger that's going to get as a movement. Yeah. And then the other piece, what I really loved your saying was that your treasury group asks for placements, because people look at an investment bank. We help support the deals, but our clients make the decision on who the players are in that team outside of us. It's not us as an investment bank. And so people don't necessarily know that. So the more people understand that it's in their corporate houses, that they need to talk to their finance and treasury groups to say, when I do this deal, let me ask for a diverse player. That's when we're going to make that substantial change. Yes. So I applaud you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yes. And one of the things that I will be the voice of the professional services firm on the outside looking in. The sensitivity issue here is what I in fact found throughout my career were many opportunities where the majority firms that had held those contracts for years, if you will, were then bringing forth possibly, I will put a diverse individual on my internal team. And absolutely, while that is viable and something that we want to foster as well, that is a human resource initiative, if you will, for that particular company, and bringing in broader, more diverse voices around the table certainly should accrue to their benefit. But from a actual supplier's perspective, they would want to say, please don't allow them to become overly comfortable with simply putting on diverse members to their majority-owned firm's team versus lobbying for pieces of business that are in fact owned, operated, controlled, managed by actual diverse firms. So
and that's exactly where I was going. And I think both of them are important, but if you lose that part that you just said, then it's window dressing, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
It's an ongoing challenge with that for sure. And it was, again, back in the day, we found that to be the answer from a lot of majority-owned firms to say, oh, well, I will give you a lead, representative that is a person of color or what have you, and that's great. But again, it improves that majority firm's bottom line, not an actually minority-owned business's bottom line.
Exactly.
It's both and. It's both and, right?
Yeah.
And Cassie, there's one important thing I think that we sometimes tend to forget. So when a majority-owned firm does end up putting individuals of color on, that's great. But when we're utilizing those minority-owned firms and women-owned firms, in many cases, beyond who they employ, start to look at the money in where are we going to do business at? What are the investments we're going to do? What are the neighborhoods we're going to invest in? And that's some of the things that our counterparts, if you think about it in corporate settings, don't understand. And that's a big part of supplier diversity.
Exactly.
It's a huge, I'm sorry, you're going to probably get there, Sandra. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I love it. Share.
Go ahead.
It's interesting, Darryl, because when you start talking about sustainability and supporting our local and regional economy, that's where the essence of the supply chain really shows its face. And so when you think about everything you just said, Darryl, what we want to do is not only do business with companies owned, operated, and controlled by diverse individuals. To your point, we want to make sure that they're hiring diversity, but but we also want to make sure that they're reinvesting back in the community.
Absolutely.
And that dollar is steady turning.
Mhm.
And now how do we get into a more robust situation where we're saying, hey, in addition to us doing business, and I think, Carlos, you mentioned it earlier, are you buying your papers, your pens, your copiers, all of that kind of thing? Are you looking to do that same kind of thing? Are you looking to, to visit the local small businesses in your area, the restaurants? Because I'm going to tell you, look, post-COVID, you're talking about where we're at now from a business perspective. Right now, we've been in pretty good shape, but the restaurants are going to take a big hit, Absolutely. I think. And I'm talking about diverse restaurants, small local bars and restaurants, et cetera. And so your point is very, very well taken in that reinvestment, that whole sustainable supply chain, that whole sustainable economy is going to be super huge. And the corporations are going to be in lead positions to drive that.
Absolutely. And I think you guys all really touched on this too. Without that spend diagnostic that you do internally to truly understand where do you spend money? And to your points, so much money is spent outside of procurement, if you will. So getting a handle on exactly where you spend money, who you engage with, and what have you, can open up doors for other corporations if they have not looked at that, to actually see some room for growth and further penetration. Yeah. This whole notion of local content absolutely starts to play much more heavily in this particular space, whether it's, finding a local provider of sanitation from this brewery, for example, this distiller. Maybe they can't handle your entire corporate need, but they certainly can handle, a particular region, if you will. The shipping costs, of course, go down if you're not having to move this from New York to California. So all of those component pieces that we have not looked at before start to come into play, I think, and how we get people who are creative in terms of unbundling the issues to get to the right end, I think is going to be critical. And I'm hearing pieces of that from all of you. So that's great to hear. When we look at this whole space in general, any thoughts that you've had about diverse suppliers in general moving forward? Any counsel, any concerns? Again, we've talked about the fact that there will be many major corporations who are not going to survive, and that is reality as well. So I'm not sure what the ratio of large businesses that will disappear are compared to small businesses that will disappear, but both of those are true. So any thought around what you would say to your diverse suppliers that either you are working with currently or that you see in the general marketplace overall? Punita, anything?
So I think the content of this topic, right? I think it's really a conversation around pivoting and market and thinking about how do we market ourselves. It's whether you're a large company or a small company, you're going to need it. What I will say is that we know that smaller organizations, smaller companies do not have the cash balance to sustain themselves over the long run. And that's a very real issue. And that's where we're probably going to see a larger number of small businesses close over the next year or two. They've been going for quite a while. They've had some subsidies. They've had some support. And we're all trying to think of ways in which we can pivot and support as many of them as we can. Hopefully there's more that we can figure out and do. But that's what it comes down to. So I would think there's a couple of things, right? For the firms that we're working with, we've also, since COVID, reached out to them and are asking them to let us know if they're coming up to a critical point, if there's things that we can help them along, if they're at this critical pivot point, right? Because it's not only us, they're depending on business from others, but if there's a way where we can shore them up and help sustain them or think about things. So we've taken actions like those. While that doesn't solve the need for many, hopefully it'll help the ones that we're working with and the ones that we're able to support bringing on board or working along with. But I think that's, when I think about concerns or things to think about for me, I know that the pool of diverse businesses that we've all worked so hard for to create opportunities for is shrinking. and what that looks like. And then I think, how do we think about perhaps, I'll use that phrase, thinking outside of the box that we've used here to find ways where maybe it's not only our own industries and the things that we're buying, but how do we think of broader ways in which to create an opportunity to uplift the diverse business community? I think that we all as corporates are probably going to have to think about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Great counsel. Byron?
I'd say broadly, when you think about, a nugget or two, it really would be to stay close to industry trends, really understanding what those trends are going to be and having the courage to pivot. Right. And so sometimes when we think about, diverse small business, they stay within the networking sessions with diversity. But beyond that, they need to network within industry groups beyond diversity to understand what those trends are. And then just know that corporations like ours, when you start thinking about, we're really leaning into that local presence. And so when you come knock on the door and you're saying, hey, these are the goods and services that we offer, be prepared to have that question asked, because we're really looking at, hey, it's not to say that we're not going to do business with companies that's not in our service territory, but you really do provide an added value when you're saying, hey, we've established a local presence, we're hiring from your local market, et cetera. You do get some added value when we look at our weighted scorecard. When we look at the scorecard, we're now have a piece of that scorecard that's for local economic impact. Are you in our service territory? Are you hiring folks? Those are the kind of questions that we're asking. And so if you think broadly, if I can say to this audience, hey, pay attention to the industry trends, have the courage to pivot, and understanding what your customer is asking. And in our case, it's a preference for local economic impact.
Perfect. Carlos?
Oh, what's different? So let's try something different that the other two have not said yet. So when I think about look for opportunities from companies like Walgreens or Advocate or JP Morgan Chase around capacity building. A lot of us have programs for small businesses, diverse on business, with capacity building, whether we partner through the Wbdc or some organization. We fund a program with Wbdc where we help them to learn how to do business with organizations of our size. Even if it doesn't benefit us, we're helping them to get their pitch together, to look at products, to do the research. So look for capacity building programs. Make sure that you're agile and flexible and that you're able to, with both Panita and Byron said, that you're able to pivot. Look for the trends and the gaps, not just the trends, but the gaps in the market, and then fill those needs.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things out there that we haven't even thought of right now.
Exactly.
As we talk about post-COVID. Post-COVID, we talk about returning to normal. We're never going to return to normal. So as a small business, get innovative and creative about what's the new normal, and then fill that gap, even though we don't even know we need it yet.
Exactly.
Fill it and then come tell me. And then the last thing I'll say is, we have category managers for probably everything under the sun, everything from beauty to construction to sanitation. Get to know your category manager that's connected to what you do. Find out what their needs are and then help them fill their needs.
Yes.
This whole notion of category managers, it's huge. We've been in it for a number of years, and at any given moment, I can go to a category manager A, B, C, or Z and find out where we have opportunities, and then go tell the market, this is what we're looking for this year.
Perfect. Thank you, Carlos. Daryl, we're going to let you have the last word.
The only thing I can add to what my esteemed colleagues has said is kind of the gloom in all of this, but it really isn't gloom. And that is, businesses need to understand and be thinking about, is it time for me to exit? And that's incredibly important. I go back and I think about when I was with another company, think about when we all started outsourcing. And when we all started looking at larger suppliers, and so many small suppliers in their niche. Office products always comes to mind for me. Where you used to have mom and pop office products, you used to have minority-owned, women-owned office product suppliers. And then, their Staples getting bigger and Office Max getting bigger. And then Walmart gets into the game as well as Amazon. And all of those small office products businesses are out of business today. So understand what everyone else has said on this panel, but also understand and think about, do I maybe need to make this choice of really going and doing something different because the industry and category around me has changed and is changing?
Absolutely. I want to stop because unfortunately we are out of time, and that's what
Oh,
happens
man, we was just, hey,
when you
Sandra,
have
we was just
robust,
revving up.
candid conversation and what have you. I want to thank all of you, one, for your candor, as well as your commitment to this notion of engaging with diverse suppliers, whether they be minority owned or women owned or what have you. So thank you for what you do in the respective industries where you are leaders to, in fact, push forward this as a concept. In closing, we want everyone to also understand that WBDC is a resource. And as the treasurer of the WBDC, I would be remiss if I did not give us a little bit of a commercial. So think and look at us when you are considering capacity building, technical assistance, whether it's one-on-one business and or financial counseling, financial support itself, looking at debt and equity, as well as direct lending. So we are there for you. We intend to be your support structure to help you through this process. But what did you hear today? You heard the willingness of these major corporations, in fact, to look at things differently out of necessity, quite frankly, to look at the whole model of sustainability, local content, and what have you, and finding that niche that no one else has identified yet. And there will be a lot of them that will continue to surface as we continue to go down this particular path. So do you need to find a partner? Do you need to acquire someone else? Shift from that distribution cycle into that manufacturing one. There is so much lemonade available here right now to take from all of these lemons that we've all been given. So going forward, we look forward to that engagement. We look forward to you coming back to the marketplace, if you will, providing some answers and solutions to not only the major corporations in this space, but to other small businesses within this space. Don't overlook them as a possible source for sale either. So going forward, I thank you all for being here. It has been an excellent panel. We will be providing contact information from our 4 panelists on a screen below at the end of this conference. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take care,
Thanks.
and everyone, please be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rona Forte, and I lead the United Airlines Business Diversity Program. I will serve as your moderator today. I've been with United Airlines for 9 months. However, I am no stranger to the supplier diversity industry. My most notable recent experience includes just about 8 years that I spent with Walgreens Boots Alliance, running their supplier diversity initiative. In our session today, we will talk about pivoting from the perspective of our women-owned business leaders, which will be the flip side of the prior session, the parity panel that was delivered earlier today. In that session, you heard about how even major corporations have had to pivot during these challenging times of COVID and social unrest. Our 3 esteemed hand-selected panelists, therefore, will flip the conversation and share stories about what they have done or are continuing to do so that they remain relevant and sustain their business operations during this time. In this 1-hour session, you will hear from Mary Porter, who successfully pivoted as a United Airlines current vendor, Kimberly Moore, who started her business in 2009, stopped, and then restarted it in 2012, and Lily Hall, who started her business shortly after 9/11 and has survived during the ups and downs between that tragic event and now COVID-19. Our goal for this session is that the participants will leave with a minimum of 2 key takeaways. 1, ideas from real life scenarios on how to pivot during times of change and uncertainty. And 2, a sense of camaraderie in knowing that you are not alone in the journey towards resurgence and sustainability. There are other WBEs right along with you. We are truly all in this together. So with that, I will now turn to our panelists and ask that they give us a quick 1-minute description of their business before we jump into the discussion. Kimberly, we'll start with you, and then Lily, and last but not least, Mary. If you didn't notice, I went alphabetically by first name. Kimberly, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rona. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the WBDC as well. My name is Kimberly Moore. I'm the founder and president of KDM Engineering, an engineering consulting firm focusing on utility work, natural gas distribution work, as well as telecommunications design.
Hi,
Lily?
I'm Lily Hall. I'm the founder and CEO of NOC, which is a full experience creative agency. We're headquartered in Minneapolis, and we also have a presence in Chicago, New York, and in Miami. And thank you for having me.
Mary?
Thank you, Rona. Thank you, WBDC, for inviting me. I am the CEO and owner of Emergent Safety Supply. We are a distributor of safety products nationwide, selling products anywhere from earplugs and hard hats all the way through high-end fall protection and confined space. We're located in Batavia, Illinois, and we have about 30 people working for us right now.
Awesome. Thank you 3 for giving us that brief overview. And now we will start our discussion on pivoting for resurgence. I'm going to start by addressing all 3, and you can really go in the same alphabetical order if you don't mind that we started off. I'm going to start with the first question, which is, can you tell me where you were during the week of March 16th, which essentially is when most of the stay-at-home orders around the country, around that time frame, they were enacted between that and the end of the month of March. And can you, during that question, answer for me if you can recall a key business project or even a client development effort that you were involved in, and tell me a little bit about your state of mind at the time, and include, please, any social unrest that you had experienced in your business in a conjunction with the COVID-19 stay-at-home order.
Man, I'm first. Okay. Thank you. The question in terms of where we were when the stay-at-home order was passed down. We had a staff meeting on Monday and let everybody know that Tuesday they will not be returning into the office. Obviously, no one thought that it would last this long. However, we just had to make that pivot, make that adjustment. And it surprisingly went better than we thought it was going to go. But in terms of business development, the summertime is the time for conferences for our industry and the time for, meetings and business development and client on-site location meetings, and all of that just stopped. So we've had to learn how to make connections with all the virtual conferences that have been, put forth, such as this one. But learning how to still work the room in a virtual environment, that has been something we've had to learn.
That is so key, Kimberly. Thank you so much for mentioning that, because I think all of us have just been technology, become subject matter experts, if you will, not willingly, but just by default. So yeah, I'm absolutely sure that time was just a little bit of a challenge for a lot of the businesses. Lily, how about you? Where were you, and what kind of things are going on in your world?
Sure. Well, I was actually traveling that week. I think for me, I happened to be married to an Italian, and so we had been monitoring the crisis long before it hit the U.S. And I just remember telling my business partners and our leadership team that we need to get ready, that this would probably more likely happen here in the U.S. Obviously, we didn't shut down as long as they did. And so we started to prepare pretty early on, and we, the goal was to have everybody 100% ready to work from home from a technology standpoint. And actually the week before, we thought we would practice. And so we were ready on that Monday. We sent out a note on Sunday that we would be, obviously working from home. As Kim said, we didn't think it would last as long. And so we were prepared, and even our clients, talked about how they couldn't tell really the difference from Friday to Monday and Tuesday. But the team was
Yeah.
really organized. And then I know you had asked about the unrest. I don't know if you want me to go into that now.
Please touch on that. That
So,
would be great.
Unfortunately, I'm in Minneapolis, where the unrest began. And I would say that, the team, a couple of things. One, we kept our full staff. We haven't furloughed anybody. And I think we were probably the only agency in our town, at least, that hadn't furloughed any staff. And so
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Morale was very high until the tragic murder of George Floyd, which really sent, obviously our community, the world, into just a really sad state. And, we have a very diverse office, and our office happens to be in North Minneapolis. And so
Oh, wow.
we needed to board up. But I would say emotionally, it was really, it's been really challenging. We had unrest again last week. I think that the community is really, really hurting. Our staff is hurting. And so I think that brings on a whole nother layer of leadership, and really, we're focused on the mental health space. Obviously, we want people safe physically, financially, but mentally, I think, has been the biggest focus for us right now.
Absolutely. I'm glad you touched on just the shift in the staff concern in mental health, because I think about, families with children that, even had to bring their children home and, kind of homeschool them, amidst coronavirus, amidst social unrest. And, do we have the right tools and equipment, for our children to continue to learn? So kudos to, the great work you've done, which we'll learn more about as we continue the panel discussion. Mary, how about you? I know we've talked a little bit. Where was your company at that time?
Well, for us, it was really back in February. And when the virus started to take over our Chinese manufacturers, our business is very dependent on our supply chain. Mm-hmm. And we purchase our products from U.S. suppliers such as 3M, Honeywell, MCR, the big suppliers. But they have their manufacturing for supplies are being done in China. So when I started hearing about the Chinese manufacturing slowing down and, subsequently closing, exporting, stopping, I knew we were going to have a negative impact on our business at that point. So we were scouring the market at that to find new suppliers. Where can we get products? Because our current suppliers were restricting and not even able to supply us products at that time. So for us, we were all hands on deck looking for any supplier that could get us product. Because as an essential business, we had to work. We had to find product and we had to deliver it to our customers. It was, though, a very, we were all just kind of in disbelief that I can't believe this is happening. And
Sure.
yeah, this is happening. And there was just a lot of sadness and fear with all the uncertainty going on. And now coupled with social unrest, I mean, that layers another whole, layer to what's happening in Chicago and with our suppliers.
Yeah, I think about an analogy we use in the airline industry all the time, and that's building the plane while we're flying it. And we don't do that, by the way. Let me make sure I clarify that at United Airlines, we are not building the plane. But it essentially, when you're working to pivot, for a resurgence, you really have to have that forethought and just be prepared for the unknown and get comfortable there. So I'm going to stick with you, Mary, if I can, and just ask you to, talk a little bit more, if you would, about when you just realized that moment that COVID would have a significant impact on your business, and what immediate next step, you touched on a little bit in the prior question, but if you could just go a little deeper on what immediate step you took in order to protect emergent safety supplies continuation.
Yes. As soon as the government mandate came out and said that all our suppliers had to ship COVID products to healthcare facilities first, and then first responders. I mean, although I agreed with it, it was dramatically going to impact our business and our orders that were sitting out waiting to be shipped. We had shipments on the docks waiting to be shipped. We've told our customers, yes, we're getting them too, don't worry. And then they were confiscated and sent to the government. And although that was the right decision to make, I'm not doubting that, it really did impact what we were doing here. So we realized and had to pivot immediately, change and adapt our environment and start looking for suppliers outside our normal chain. And, there at the same time, there were other companies emerging, supply companies, businesses that were changing their core business from breweries to hand sanitizers, from, car manufacturers to ventilators, and it was like the Wild West. They were popping up all over. And we had to be very concerned and diligent to make sure that the products that we did order from these vendors and new suppliers met the government regulations from a safety perspective. I don't want hand sanitizer that's that 70% alcohol. That's not going to cut it with with our customers. And or we don't want face masks that they claim are 3-ply, meet all the requirements, and you get them and they're junk. So we had a double-edged sword in terms of going out and finding new suppliers, trying to build a relationship with them and trust them, and then, go ahead and purchase the product. And even then, they would tell us, okay, yeah, we can have the product to you in 2 or 3 weeks. So then we're communicating with our customers the whole time because they're very nervous. They need the products. This is their business. And then we call the vendor back. Well, there was a problem in the supply chain where, for instance, we had a bunch of hand sanitizer ordered.
Mm-hmm.
And so we called to make sure, is it on board? Are we ready to ship? Well, we had a problem because we can't get plastic caps and pumps and dispensers to put on the hand sanitizer because there was a problem down that chain. So it was a very challenging time, but we did pivot. We were able to find multiple suppliers, but for us as a business, we were really caught in this perfect storm, and still are, quite frankly. We have limited access to products. We have an exploding customer base that needs it. Our customers need these products.
Yep.
We have skyrocketing costs that are going on, and our business model had to change. It was very important that we were able to change rapidly and pivot and start new and learn, throughout that process. But with the access to products, we also have all these fraudulent companies out there where people were buying, I just bought 100 cases of, N95s, and they get it. And they weren't even standard regulated N95s that they could use. We had a lot of customers that went to the market just to see if they could get the products. And then it didn't prove to be true. And so for us, even today, we are working with our vendors and slowly starting to come back and slowly starting to get those products that we placed the orders for back in February.
Yeah. And I think what you've hit on, Mary, is so key. When we talk about building a relationship of trust with your supply chain partners,
Right.
and you're in a virtual environment and you're trying to make all that happen. And then, like I said, you have, situations with parties that you're speaking with that are navigating family situations at technology. I mean,
Exactly.
kudos and applause to all three of you for, successfully navigating that, because it was similar, in even in the corporate realm, which, again, that panel talked about that earlier. But no, I hear you. It was quite a bit. If we can, Lily, let's move on to looking, out to the next 12 months. I mean, we've obviously, kind of, I don't want to say gotten used to this, because who wants to get used to this as a new normal, but, we've kind of, weathered some storms, as we've talked about a little bit. But Lily, if you could consider the next 12 months and talk a little bit about any anticipated partnering in order to scale and be even more sustainable, kind of, dovetailing a little bit off of some of Mary's comments. But if you could talk about the plans for NOC over the next 12 months and how they may incorporate WBE collaborations.
Sure. So we actually started a conversation with another she's also MBE and WBE, Elizabeth Miranda. She's based in New Jersey. She has a company called CQ Fluency that really focuses on cultural intelligence. And between her cultural intelligence and NOC's marketing skills, we actually created a practice called DRUM, and that really focuses on underserved markets. And so we're calling it an intercultural practice. I would say most companies would throw it under the multicultural space. And the reason why we call it intercultural is because it's inclusive of underserved markets. So it's not only race, ethnicity, and gender, it also is inclusive of people with disabilities, the LGBTQ community. And so we started this, and I would say that especially right now with the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations that are happening in every company, we're seeing a lot of traction for these conversations, as well as marketing efforts. So that's something
great.
We are seeing and picking up speed and planning for over the next 12 months.
That's great. And, and then looking at, the WMBE company that you mentioned and, kind of incorporating them to bring, again, that scale and that, camaraderie and collaboration, I think is an excellent way to grow business opportunities for that diverse business community. Kimberly, we're going to shift over to you, and I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about just one important, I'm sure there were several, adjustment that you had to make. I mean, your story, about starting your business and, stopping it in 2009, and stopping it and restarting, I think really speaks to adjustments that you've had to make in terms of managing your business, like any expense cuts or, things that you've had to do in order to be more collaborative and, again, retain your business model. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So you kind of brought it up when you said we've been through it before a little bit. 2009, we started the business, and then the life happened. You had a recession, and there were a few other things that happened that forced me to kind of shut down for a little bit, and then we came back. and we rose again and came back and from the ashes in 2012. And here we are again. But we had to change our business model. We had to change our business plan. I can't tell you how many business plans that I have written that have gone into the garbage because we've had to just make changes. And it always feels good if you can make changes on the fly, but you would like to be a little better prepared with some of the changes. But I will say that having to make those adjustments in the past has taught us at least some groundwork in terms of being able to make changes now. And I mean, we'll just call this 2020. I mean, there's no other, really adjective to call this, all of what's going on, except just calling it 2020. So when 2020 just happened, we already had groundwork laid in terms of how to make changes. We just had to come up with what the changes were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, that's great. And I think you hit the nail, and all of you have so far, is really, assessing the moment, realizing this is the moment that you're in, and then just making the adjustment, even with, in the realm of uncertainty. And I think a lot of times, as women leaders, I'll just put a plug in and for that, we're more agile in that way and can really I don't want to say it this way, but I can't think of another phrase, dance on a dime. And it really, I think, comes from just all the things that I am a mother of 4 children that, we just have to be able to get it all done, corporate life, home life, marital life, whatever the life is, we got to get it done. And so, Kimberly, I think you touched on something that, this is 2020 and, we just got to figure it out. This is where we are. So, I applaud your efforts there. Let's shift a little bit. Mary, we're going to come back to you.
Okay.
And let's talk about innovation. Let's talk about, Emergent started in a certain place when they made the acquisition of a former company. And then you moved into, certain other supplies. And where are you today, in terms of new innovation that you implement in terms of offerings to your clients? And where do you foresee yourself, in the next, 12 months, if you will?
Well, we have one of the things that we really stress is listening to our customers and helping them solve problems. We're not order takers. We're not a catalog house. We go, we listen, we understand their business. We've come up with a number of products that are unique for our customers because we've been on site with them. We've actually been hands-on seeing the issues that they're having. We've come up with a to-go bag where we have a large utility company we work with, and all their first aid equipment and fire retardant blankets, and they were all over the back of the truck. So what we did is we came up with this to-go bag. We labeled everything. There's 7 bags in this one bag. And every day they look, we see it's been opened. They re-put in, they replenish a product. And, they've been incredibly successful because if somebody is burnt, let's say on a utility pole, they go grab the burn kits that are in a complete bag and they take it there. And in fact, it's really helped them in rescuing and, keeping people safe from that point of view. But we're always looking for things to innovate and change and be different. I truly believe that if you're not changing and you're not adapting, you're never going to survive in this world. It is a sustainable attribute that each company has to learn to do. So many of us are stuck in our points of view, and we've done it this way. And you just really have to break out of that mindset and start thinking differently.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I think about, another airline analogy, if you would, pre-COVID, you'd have the, flight attendants through the aisle with the beverage service and, the snacks. And I just took a recent flight to Arizona to visit with my son. And I hadn't been on a plane since the onset of COVID, for obvious reasons. But once I felt safe to make that trip, when I got on the plane, they were handing out the wipes, as you walk on, through the aisles and have your seat. And then the the actual service that they provided, you have your snacks in a bag along with your water bottle. So everything is in one bag.
One bag.
They hand it to you. So those are, to your point, Mary, the innovations that we've got to now just be, as much as, forward on the cusp of it, because I just, this is truly, and I hate to use this term because it's so coined and it makes me uncomfortable sometimes, the new normal. People's safety habits and their concerns and considerations for things. I don't foresee this, leaving our realm and our environment for a while, for at least 3 to 4 years. It's just going to be top of mind. You've got people with small children, you've got people with underlying health conditions. So safety, I think that's why I asked you the innovation question, is going to be so keen and key, as we move forward. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to shift now to what I have a labor of love for as an accountant, and that's money. So let's talk a little bit, if we can start with you, Lily, about if your company was able to benefit from the CARES Act and secure any of the PPP funding. Tell us a little bit about the experience and any support partners that you work with in order to be successful if you were engaged in that.
Absolutely. We were fortunate to have been approved for the PPP loan very early in the first round. And I would say this is not a public service announcement for the WBDC or WeBank or WPO, but I would say if it wasn't for these organizations, I don't think that I would have been able to secure the loan when we did. Just the outreach that the WBDC and our WPO partners and C200 did in those early times. Every week there were 2 to 3 calls. Obviously, the rules kept changing even past receiving the loan. And it was just really instrumental to our business that we were on top of that process. And so super grateful for all the partners, and not just, even colleagues and other women business owners that I could reach out to. And so I would say we were very, very fortunate. We were on top of it. We were educated. We were ready. We had a great banking partner with PNC Bank. So it's been incredible. And we were able to keep our full staff, which was really the purpose of that loan. And it will be fully forgivable because we've used it for our payroll. So again,
that's awesome.
Really grateful. Wish we didn't have to go through it, but was glad that there was a program in place for small businesses.
Absolutely. And I, as a board member of the WBDC, I will accept the kudos that you shared and take those on for our wonderful president and staff. I have been on the receiving end of many of those correspondence and cascading them out. So I'm really happy to hear that it was instrumental in your success. Kimberly, what about you? Were you a part of that program, and how did it work out for your business?
So we were also very fortunate in the first round to receive PPP funding. I also received the correspondences from the WBDC, but I also had a great relationship, which again, I'll stress relationships are important, but with our bank. And the day that anything came out at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was on the phone or got a text message from our banker, and to the point where I was like, all right, Corey, I guess this is going to be every day. I guess every day we're going to talk at this time and discuss what's changed, because Lily was right. There was so many changes going out. Every day there was something else. You can use it for this, up to this percent. Okay, now you can use it up to this percent, and you can use it for rent. Okay, no rent. Now it has to be used for, whatever. Oh, it can be extended now from 8 weeks to 12 weeks to this week. So between my banker and the correspondences we were receiving from organizations like the WBDC, we were on top of it and were able to receive it. So and we were fortunate that it was available.
No, that's fantastic, Kimberly. I'm glad that both you and Lily were successful. The one thing that I heard in your remarks is your banking relationships. I heard that in both of your comments, and I think that is so key. I have happen to serve on a couple of different boards. And I will tell you, there have been some unfortunate stories with respect to the banking relationships that were thought to have existed, that were determined to not necessarily be what they were expected to be. So it's good that you have really strong financial resources during times of need and when you don't need it. You need to, cultivate that. And again, being in a virtual environment and trying to start that, I can only imagine, how difficult that may have been for some businesses to participate. Mary, would you like to chime in at all? I don't want to leave you out of this conversation.
No, that's fine. No, we were blessed and lucky enough to get, the PPE package and care package for employees. But what I found with banking relationships, I want to talk on that, is our business model changed, and no longer do we pay for our products that we purchase on terms. Now, because we had to pivot and we're working with new suppliers, we have to pay upfront before the product is even started to be manufactured. Then we pay for when it hits the US. So for a small mid-sized business, it was very difficult to put $300,000 out there to begin the manufacturing with all that uncertainty as, are we going to get the product? So our bank, we have a wonderful relationship with them. So they were able to give us loans and letters of credit so that we could, secure these products and carry on with our business. But yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And we kept all our employees. That was one of our requirements, was to keep our employees. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We did too, Rona, just making sure we kept all of our employees as well.
I when you look at, the unemployment rate and all the different things that are going on there, for two women-owned businesses to be able to, holistically attest that was the survival rate, because I always think of the trickle-down effect, how, households, trying to keep them in balance so that, people can continue on. So again, hats off to you. As you've seen on the news, United had its own challenge and continues to work through some of those things. And unfortunately, there had to be some initial attrition. But it has, I think someone said it at the onset of the call, I think our compassion and our awareness and just our keen focus on certain things that we may not have paid as close attention to as it relates to our workforce, it has really brought, this pandemic has really brought that to light. I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I promise you will be safe and you'll be fine, but I'm the moderator, so I have the mic, and I get the liberty to ask, some questions that have just come to mind based on what I've been hearing so far. So, as you look at, and I'll talk about a little bit more about civil unrest, as you look at, all the things that this country is experiencing, this is obviously an election year and all of that. If you've implemented or instituted any, sort of listening sessions or any type of trainings that to kind of bring people closer together and get to some of the topics that are, on the heart and minds of a lot of employees now. I've seen so many social media posts about how it's, so difficult to kind of, have, I don't know how to call this, but the game face, right, on a day-to-day basis when you've got, people that look like your relatives and your family members that are, you're just experiencing, devastating loss. And so can one of you or any one of you speak to any, sort of programs or any conversations or anything that you've done differently within your business to really ensure that your employees know that, you're mindful of, their challenges and their struggles, and you really want to be a part of the conversation?
This is Lily. I can go. I would say, we have a very diverse agency, and so we've for years have done work around diversity, equity, inclusion workshops. But I would say what we realized is that they were very foundational. Bias and all kinds, and they're great. And I think what we realized is, George Floyd was murdered Monday night. Tuesday, I was in the office and I could everyone was just, the people that were in the office, but there was a lot of pain. And so on Wednesday, it was a very impromptu staff meeting. 80 people joined. We did not have an agenda. We did not have a moderator. We just started having conversations, and it was really, emotional and powerful to hear from our Black employees. There were a lot of, we didn't ask anybody to speak, but they wanted to speak about how they were feeling. And I think, through those conversations, there was a lot, you could just see that people really, we needed to go deeper in the subject. And so we actually hired, I'm trying to get her certified. Her name's Sina Hodges. She's got a business called The Woke Coach, WOKE. And it's a 7-month journey that we're going to be going on with her around allyship. And so we had our first session, and it's the staff is just really engaged. I asked to have cameras on. Everybody did. And, I think it's just really important work. I would say that a lot of my colleagues that maybe don't have BIPOC employees don't really realize that these are conversations that you need to have, whether you have diverse employees or not, because you have employees that may be partners with, a person of color. And it's a huge commitment, obviously financially and time-wise, but I would say the commitment to go deeper and to really become better listeners and to really, we'll never experience what George Floyd experienced, but experience what Black people experience every day. I'm Latina. I've had my own experiences. But I think it's just that really critical commitment to the conversation.
Yeah, no, spot on, Lily, and I appreciate those remarks. Lily, I'm sorry, Mary, want to add to that?
Well, we have a diverse workforce as well, and we've had huddles and we've discussed it. But it's a very tough subject to get deep into, and I think we all know each other. We've all worked with each other for years, and so we have kind of a friendship, kind of family atmosphere. But you really don't understand when people walk out your business door what it is they're facing in the world, and that's kind of what you really want to get to and really truly understand.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And Kimberly, before I get off of this topic, would you like to add anything to, how your environment shifted?
So what I asked my staff to do, my executive team, was to find me what some call a performance coach. I call a therapist. And I said, I want them on staff full time. I don't care how much it costs me. They should be dedicated to KDM. And I don't care if only one person uses them. I want them to be available. And I don't want it to be the employee assistant program that you get a different person every time that you call and you have to explain your story all over again. I want one person dedicated to KDM because it is heavy. This is heavy. Yeah. It was already one thing to be locked in the house and not be able to, have human, contact. If you live by yourself, we had people that literally reached out to me in any of our town halls or any of our group meetings that said, I'm having a hard time mentally staying by myself. I can't go anywhere. This is when we were in like phase 1 and 2, there's nothing open. And then you pair that with the fact that we had the civil unrest and now you have places that you can't go even if you wanted to go. Yeah. And then you have, just all kinds of things going on, and it is really heavy. So that was one of the things that we had town halls, we opened up, we have events, we took polls to ask what the staff wanted to do, because we usually do a quarterly outing. What do you want to do with the money for the quarterly outing this year? And we had people do votes. And do you want to donate it to this hospital or get lunches for, this group of people or donate to this? So we tried to get input. We put out statements. We did all of that. But the therapist idea, that's here to stay because it's necessary.
You're absolutely right. And I think Lily touched on it earlier on, mental health, and we didn't talk about this, but, there are people even on your, team, and I unfortunately had a loss as well, that lost relatives, as a result of this. And, their mental state, just trying to stay focused and being intentional about whatever their job deliverable is. It's just kind of, it's all over the place. And the one thing I learned in doing D&I work for the past 20 plus years, actually was housed within diversity and inclusion at Walgreens Boots Alliance, is there's such a loss of discretionary effort within an employment base when these type of matters are not really addressed, and they don't feel like they have a place to kind of talk through some of these matters. So I commend each one of you for taking whatever demonstrative step you did, just to let your employees know you care, you're listening, you really want to be a part of the change, because that's what we're looking for, change. And not, just kind of, business as usual, get that document to me by 10, that kind of thing. That makes such a significant difference. And I commend you all for that. So I would like to touch on one other topic, and then one final question, and then we can close out. Lily, I'm going to, if I can, push this one your way. Did you have an exit strategy or even a succession plan in place before COVID? And if so, have you revisited it at all as a result of COVID?
We've been talking, planning. I mean, I've had the business for 19 years. It's a very young industry. I'd like to think that I'm young, but I think for me, that working 60 hours a week, and Kim and Mary know this. I mean, it's not sustainable. I was traveling probably, I think I'm 9 years diamond on a different airline. Sorry. That's who services my area, but you probably know what that
We'll
means.
work on that. We'll work on that, Lily.
Just get me out of Minneapolis, please. But just traveling all the time. And so really thinking about myself, is this sustainable, even from a lifestyle standpoint. I was really, really burning out last year, fall, and really kind of processing, like, what am I doing? And so personally, I had a number in mind of when I was possibly going to maybe slow down a little bit or cut back. And I think that really just went out the window. And I think you just go into this survival mode. I need to save the company. I need to keep everybody employed. I need to keep, my family safe, get my kids through college. I actually had kind of I wouldn't say nervous breakdown, but I had a breakdown a couple of weeks ago, and it was just like came out of nowhere. And so I think it is, it's, you really need to think about, what you want personally out of the business. I've been reflecting a lot, like, what am I doing? Where am I going? How long am I going to do this for? So definitely. And I think we're fortunate. We have an incredible, a great business partner, incredible leadership team. And then we also have a board of advisors.
Okay.
So I would say that having those conversations and starting to formalize the plans are really, really important. And, whatever happens with the business, whether someone else takes it over or whether I stick around as a chairwoman, I would say starting to plan. So in my head, I did have a number, but that number's changed.
Got it. Thank you for that, Lily. So let's do this. I'm going to go around what I call my Hollywood Squares circle here, and I'm going to move over and ask you to think about what you would tell a listener, one of the WBE or MBE companies that are listening in. What word of advice, I'll frame it that way, you would leave for them, and I would like to do it in a very nugget based way. So if you could just kind of toss maybe 3 words out that kept you grounded and kept you going, because we all know this is about, and I'll toss the first word out while you think about it. This is truly an endeavor when you're an entrepreneur in resilience, right? Fortitude and just, I call it staying power. So those are my 3 that I'll toss out from a corporate perspective, but I'll start with you, Kimberly, and then I'll move to Mary, and then you finally, Lily, to close us out.
I would say the ability to pivot, and that's not just because that's what the name of the segment is, but the ability to pivot, resurgence, because if you went out of business, you have to be able to come back. And you have to rebrand yourself. So resurgence, and I don't know if you already said this, Rona, but I would say perseverance for sure. Perseverance.
That's great. Yeah. Mary?
I would say and I think we've all done it, especially during this time, is flexibility. You need to learn to be flexible. You need to adapt and change are big ones that I've had to do and our companies had to do as we pivoted through the through the COVID product, issue and developing new relationship with new suppliers. But also, I think it's just sheer grit. You gotta just do it.
Okay.
And, at times you just don't want to. And you're like, I can't believe we're even here. But you just gotta, every morning, you just gotta get up. You gotta look at what you're given. You gotta just, barrel through it. And it takes a lot of grit.
Absolutely.
And I know women have grit. We have grit.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Lily, how about you?
I mean, I would say, I've become a master at asking for help. I think that's something that I was not comfortable with early in my business. You don't have to have all the answers. I can call Kim now. I can call Mary. I can call Rona. I can call a bunch of people. So I think I suffered in silence in the early stages of my business. Google was also not around, but I would say just asking for help. And I thrive on the future. And so for as scary as this is, I sort of think about what is next and what opportunities can come from, this horrific situation. And as you said earlier, and even with Mary, when we look about behaviors and how moving forward, we're all different now in terms of wellness and trial and tasting and food. And, we do a lot of work in the beauty space. So I think, just opportunities that will come out of this time.
Fantastic. Well, I am just overwhelmed with all this good information that you nuggets of wisdom, I'll call them, that you have all shared with regard to really pivoting for resurgence. I want to thank each one of you for just opening up your heart to these, business owners that are listening in. Again, going back to one of the key takeaways, and that is, really understanding that we're all in this together and we are stronger when we are, kind of collaborating and working with one another to grow our businesses and to get our brands out there. I'd like to thank all the listeners for taking time to indulge us in this conversation about pivoting. Hopefully you have some wonderful takeaways that you can implement in your business right away. And of course, we know the Women's Business Development Center staff is there to help you and to support you. So I will put that plug in. I do want to also make sure that I ask for your support as listeners with regard to helping the WBDC to continue to ignite business growth. We do have, I think Amelia mentioned it in an earlier session, a donation platform that you can participate in the conference app. And additionally, the team at the WBDC will share a link to the donations page in the chat box. So once again, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to the Women Business Development Center for allowing me to moderate this women-owned business panel was what I was trying to say. On behalf of United Airlines, we're really, thriving to be as close and more intentional with respect to engaging women-owned businesses. One example is our great partnership with Emergent Safety Supply and Mary Porter, and we look forward to getting to know as many new business owners that meet our needs as possible in the future. So with that, I will close out our panel. And again, thank everyone. And hopefully this was meaningful. It gave you some things that you can kind of work through, and feel free to reach out if you need to, because we are definitely all in this together. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Johnson, and I am the Director of the Established Business Services at the Women's Business Development Center. I am delighted to be the MC for the Shirley Marks Pitch Competition Regional Finale this year. By way of background, in 2019, Patricia Marks, who is the chair of New World Van Lines, helped us launch the first regional pitch competition as part of the legacy of the former chair and CEO, Shirley Marks. Shirley was a tremendous friend and supporter of the Women's Business Development Center. This year marks the second annual regional pitch competition. I'd like to give you a brief description of the process that we use for the competition. 15 WBEs from throughout the Midwest region were selected to submit 3-minute videos. The local contestants from Chicago included Robin Beeman with Beeman Incorporated, Allison Collins with Select Brands LLC, and Brooke Foley with the Jane Agency. The contestants from Kansas City were Allison Davidson Motoyama with Donna Bella Shreds, and Angela Stevens with Refocus. Milwaukee's contenders were Lori Mallett, Hatch Staffing Incorporated, Adonica Randall, Axband, Julie Savitt with AMS Elite Solutions Incorporated. The contestants from St. Louis were Anne Marie Mayuga, AMM Communications, Jane McGowan, Elastazal, Casey Seebeck, Technology Solutions Incorporated. And finally, the Twin Cities contenders were Lynn Johnson, Facility Sourcing Direct, Michelle Marins, We Sparkle, and Sonia Miller Van Ort, Sapantia Law Group. For the local market competitions, we had panels of judges from each local market consisting of WBDC corporate and government community partners. The local market judges from Chicago were Michael Cabrera with Exelon, Kristen Malik with CDW, and Kathy April Rush with AbbVie Incorporated. The local Kansas City judges were Val Collazo with Evergy, Angelique Hill with Hallmark Cards Incorporated, and Chris Kelly with Metropolitan Community College. The local judges from Milwaukee were Danielle Bly with WEC Energy, Stacy Crowther with Advocate Aurora Health, and Jasmine M. Johnson with Manpower Group. The St. Louis judges were Kendra Burris Austin with Centene Corporation, Stacy Dover with Amarin, and Daphne Pointer with Bear USA LLC. And finally, the Twin Cities local market judges were Catalin Carini with Cargill, Jorge Garcia with Land of Lakes, and Mariah Norberg with Excel Energy. Each local market panel selected finalists for the finale, and as you will be hearing momentarily, and I'm sure the competition was very fierce throughout the markets. The pitches from each of the 5 finalists were then evaluated by the finale panel of judges, which consisted of Carlos Cubia, Walgreens Boots Alliance Incorporated, and Carlos was also one of our parity panelists earlier today. J.P. Keating with Allstate was also a judge, and Lee Lewis, formerly with Enterprise Holding. We also had Latanya Forte Lyle with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, and our wonderful Patty Marks, Chair of New World Van Lines. So now you're about to hear the names of the 5 finalists and see each of their pitches. I have really been looking forward to this part of the program. The finalist from Chicago is Robin Beeman, founder and president of Beeman Incorporated. Let's watch Robin's pitch.
Hi, I'm Robin Beeman and I'm president of Beeman Incorporated. I absolutely love what I do. I have a communications firm and we specialize in public relations, community engagement, reputation management, and diversity and inclusion. I've had the honor and the privilege of working with 3 African American billionaires, Oprah Winfrey, Bob Johnson, and Sheila Johnson with Black Entertainment Television. All 3 of them trusted me with their brand, and I enhanced, promoted, and protected their brands. I learned a lot of life lessons working with them, how to run a business successfully, how to negotiate, and how to win with integrity. Later, I went on to start my own business, and I have worked with some of the best companies in the country, including like Coca-Cola, Warner Media, Nielsen, HBO, and we also work with nonprofits and government entities like the Illinois Department of Transportation. We are great storytellers, and I have a team of 13 former journalists, brand strategists, and PR experts, and we know how to win. When the Dan Ryan Highway was shut down by an angry community, the Illinois Department of Transportation called us. We went into that community, talked with the elected officials and the community, and put together an aggressive public relations and community engagement program to calm the residents and make sure that they knew what was happening moving forward every step of the way. When our beloved film critic Roger Ebert passed, it was our company that handled all media relations and logistics around the activities. And for 13 years, Beeman Incorporated was the lead agency for the global research company Nielsen. We managed Asian and the Latino agencies, and we did public relations, events, and advertising. I would love to work for you. Let's create magic together. Thank you.
Next, our finalist from Kansas City is Allison Davis and Motoyama. She is the founding and managing director of Donna Bella Shreds. Here's Allison's pitch.
If everybody could please just take a second and look at your shirt. We won't talk about your pants because I'm sure a lot of you probably aren't wearing them. So again, your shirt. Did you know that when your shirt was made, nearly 15% of the material ends up on the cutting room floor? Every year, millions of tons of new unused textile remnants end up in the landfill. My name is Allison Davidson Motoyama, owner and founder of Donna Bella Shreds. We take these new unused materials and upcycle them into eco-fabulous, beautiful fashion accessories called shreds. So, COVID-19 has hit us hard, as with much of the fashion industry at this time. We may be down, but we're not out. Now is the time to pivot, to get creative, and to be resourceful with what we have. So, what can we do, or what can we make with the material that we already have? It turns out, a lot. So I'd like to introduce 3 new product lines that have been created in response to the pandemic. All the products surround 3 key concepts of helping others, helping young families, and women helping women. So number 1, helping others. Our material also works as an elastic alternative for mask making purposes. We've been selling our material online and also donating our material to foundations who make masks and give them away to free to frontline workers and the most vulnerable populations. So this has been successful. Number 2, helping young families. I'm a mom of 4 young girls, and when the pandemic started, I'm at home with my girls. What are we gonna do? Need some activities. Craft kits are back orders. We got creative. We started to use our material to make scrunchies, macrame projects, keychains. With that was the whole base of our new Donna Bella Shreds craft kit line, which was just launched this month, actually. And number 3, women helping women. This is super fun. We've partnered with local women-owned businesses and collaborated with some fun projects, such as upcycling remnants from a fashion designer, Kate Wagner. She owns Legit here in Des Moines. Or working with Naughty Nail for string art projects for kids using Donna Bella Shreds material. Or Olga's Organics, who has fun organic makeup collection, and then we use our Bella bands and create gift sets. So lots of fun, different projects right now that are all generating sales and becoming successful. So everybody keeps saying we are in this together, and that's so great, but it's not enough. We can't just sit still and hope to survive this. We need to move forward. We need to get creative, and we need to help each other out.
Milwaukee's finalist is Julie Savitt, president of AMS Elite Solutions. Let's watch Julie in action.
What drives you? At AMS, our core values propel us to success, and I feel it's never been more important considering the unusual time that we're in. My name is Julie Savitt, and I'm owner of AMS Elite Solutions, a certified woman-owned, disadvantaged small business specializing in creative solutions to everyday job site challenges while focusing on providing certified stone, dirt, and specialized hauling. The company is 16 years old, located in Lakeville, Illinois, and we provide services and products in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. The quality of our work and dedication to our partners by providing a service over self approach has afforded us many positive relationships. Industry partners rely on AMS's understanding of government contracting and compliance. We've had the pleasure of working with IHC, Industria, NICOR, Department of Military Affairs, University of Illinois, and Railworks on projects with the CTA, O'Hare and Midway Airports, Water Reclamation, CDOT, IDOT, and the Tollway, just to name a few. Having proven we are industry influencers and business resources to our clients, it has afforded us the opportunity to work on some of the largest projects in Chicago. The consolidated rental car structure at O'Hare Airport with Austin Powers and Illini Precast included 15 drivers, moving 24 loads a day of oversized, overweight precast panels. Over the course of 1 year, we moved 4,800 loads, pulled more than 10,000 city and state permits without incident and ahead of schedule. The CTA RPM project speaks specifically to how we collaborated with Walsh Floor. We were hired for trucking services and stone supply, but today we provided portable lighting, loaders, operators, and manpower to increase participation, create efficiencies, and opportunities. FH Passion awarded AMS one of the larger WBE City of Chicago contracts for hauling on the 78, also known as the Wells-Wentworth Connector, for which we provide up to 50 trucks a day. AMS Elite Solutions' motto is no surprises approach to business. We practice transparency and empowerment both inside and outside of the office. Our recent implementation of open book management provides financial training and therefore full understanding of what metrics drive business. This awareness facilitates ownership and therefore continual improvement. Transparency, education, and technology have united our family to propel us to elite solutions. And although our foundation was built on dump trucking, we're now successful stone suppliers, street sweepers, flaggers, truck escorts, and so much more. I ask what drives you and how can we move forward together? Thank you.
The St. Louis finalist is Jane McGowan, president of Elastozel of St. Louis Incorporated. Here's Jane's pitch.
4.5 years ago, I swore to myself that I would never get involved with anything related to the construction industry ever again. On February 8th, 2016, I stood in our driveway as I watched our house burn down. By the grace of God, I escaped unharmed, and the rest of my family was away that day. Because of that incident, I needed a new career path. 2 years later, on January 2nd, 2018, I became the owner of Elastosil of St. Louis, a specialty applicator of lightweight cellular concrete servicing the needs of the construction industry. Yes, I did say the construction industry. Hi, I'm Jane McGowan, and I am very proud of my company, Elastosil of St. Louis. My past experiences and values ingrained in me since childhood further enhanced my determination and drive to provide the absolute best company possible. Our principles and foundations of honesty, integrity, fairness, transparency, going above and beyond to exceed customer expectations is a core of everything within our entire team and congruent throughout everything we do at Elastosil of St. Louis. We take a proactive and transparent approach to every job and communicate everything up front so that there are no surprises or unwanted changes. We have a highly trained crew committed to the highest of standards and beaming with pride in their work. We will never cut corners or compromise quality, period. Our small team has a combined work experience of over 170 years, which provides us the knowledge and expertise to assist you with providing cost-effective and efficient solutions to your most difficult problems and obstacles. We provide a very honest approach to working in conjunction with architects, engineers, owners, and general contractors, and openly share that knowledge. Always seeking ways to propose alternative cost-saving solutions, even if it means suggesting a product or application that we don't normally provide. Yes, we may suggest an option which takes away business from us, but it's a long-term relationship that we ultimately seek. Our product provides distinct advantages over other alternatives. This is a sample of our lightweight cellular concrete. The applications of our products include floor toppings and underlayments, roof decks, and engineered fill. Our lightweight cellular concrete engineered fill can be customized to various densities and strengths, ranging from 20 PCF to 120 PCF. It is fast on site, utilizing specialized customized equipment, greatly reducing the number of truckloads. This product requires no compaction. Unlike soil, it is excavatable, can pump and flow long distances, and completely fills the void. Take, for example, this sample of a pipe abandonment. You can see that our product completely fills all the spaces, leaving no gaps or holes. Similar competitive products contain sand. Our product does not contain sand. As you can imagine, sand is more difficult to pump long distances, is heavier, and can leave voids and gaps. Speaking of fill, hopefully I have filled you in on just a few of the unique advantages of Elastosil of St. Louis that distinguishes us from the rest. Will you please reach out to us on your next project and let us prove to you the world of difference that we make. Thank you for your time and consideration.
And now for the final pitch from the Twin Cities. The finalist is Michelle Marins, founder and CEO of We Sparkle.
Do you feel swamped? Are you suffering from Zoom fatigue? I know that I used to emerge from my home office feeling like a zombie. Fortunately, I hired Sparkle Assistant. Hello, my name is Michelle Marins, and I'm the founder and CEO of We Sparkle. We're a software company that helps busy people find balance. We do this by providing people with their very own digital assistant called the Sparkle Assistant. Sparkle Assistant handles those tedious administrative tasks that manage to eat up a lot of your time. For example, instead of going back and forth over email with a contact to schedule a meeting, let your Sparkle Assistant handle it. Sparkle Assistant text messages back and forth with your contacts to schedule calls, Zoom sessions, or other types of appointments. This makes it easier than other scheduling options because you don't need to download an app or wait for a web page to load or remember a login. For example, my parents don't really know how to download an app or navigate the web, but they do know how to text message me, and they can use the Sparkle Assistant. It's also more accessible for people who live in more rural or remote areas and don't have internet access, or for people who don't own a laptop or the latest phone. Best of all, we built in a special work-life balance feature so that you can limit the number of meetings you take every day. This was based on feedback from a customer who, like me, was feeling a bit like a zombie earlier this summer. We always welcome customer feedback and continue improving Sparkle Assistant to make it even more helpful for you. For business owners, Sparkle Assistant can answer frequently asked questions from your customers or automatically upsell them on your business's products or services. For example, if people order dinner from your restaurant, Sparkle Assistant can automatically ask them if they want to add dessert for $5 extra. It can also schedule a time for them to pick up their order so that you can better manage the number of people in your space at a time and adhere to social distancing measures. After a pickup or an appointment, Sparkle Assistant can automatically message your customers and ask them to leave a review. We encourage these referrals by letting customers know that if they leave a review, we'll donate $1 to a charitable cause of their choice. That's how we help small businesses and give back to the community at the same time. So if you want to save time, increase your sales, or invest in community, we ask you to subscribe to Sparkle Assistant at wesparkle.ai. Our customers tell us that Sparkle Assistant is slick, easy to use, and a lifesaver. They report it saves them between 1 to 5 hours a week in time. And that makes us happy, because we know that means they get to spend more time doing what they love, whether that's strategizing how they'll grow their business or spending more time with their families. At our company, we just want people to let their light shine, to help others shine, so that together we sparkle.
Wow, each one of you did such an amazing job. Your pitches were so impressive, but I'm sure it wasn't easy for the judges to make a final decision throughout this process. And now it's the moment we've been waiting for. I'm going to announce the 2020 pitch competition winners, and I'll start with the second place winner. And the winner is Robin Beeman of our Chicago market, has won the second place prize of $2,500. Congratulations, Robin, you did an awesome job. And now it's time to learn who won the $5,000 grand prize. And the winner is Jane McGowan from St. Louis. Outstanding job, Jane. I want to give a hearty congratulations to both of our winners today, and a warm thanks to all of the other impressive regional finalists and local market contestants, as well as a thank you to our judges. The WBDC greatly appreciates the Marks family for their support the second year of our pitch competition for our WBEs throughout our region. We so appreciate your support. And finally, many thanks to all of you for being with us today. And now I'll turn things over to the WBDC President and CEO, Amelia Domingo.
Thank you, Cynthia. And thank you to the many individuals who donated to the WBDC when registering for today's conference, and those that have been contributing throughout the day. Every dollar donated will support the WBDC in continuing to deliver equal access to business resources, capital, and connections. We continue to ask for your support to help us ignite business growth. Donations can be made online right here on the Socio platform by clicking the Donate tab, which can be found on the left side of your computer screen and on the home page of the conference app. Additionally, our team will be sharing a link to our donation page in the chat box. Without the great support of our funders, corporate, government, foundations, and individual donors like you, none of this would be possible. In closing, once again, thank you for joining us at this year's conference and for all you do in support of the WBDC and our clients. And that concludes our 2020 conference, except for those of you participating in the Business Matchmaker, which starts at 2:30. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay committed to economic and racial justice and equality. And be sure to exercise your right to vote and be heard on November 3rd.